I took up this work in the Congo, you see, for the sake of civilization. And well, for the welfare of the natives. The Congo, it was never truly Belgium's. No, never. It was mine.
King Leopold II, a man who really wanted to have an empire, but he wanted to do it without firing a single shot. In 1885 in Berlin, the big European powers met to plan how they would take over Africa. Behind all the talk about bringing civilization and helping people, there was only one real reason: gold, ivory, rubber. They wanted to steal everything. That's when a famous name comes into the picture: Henry Morton Stanley. He was a British explorer, known for finding David Livingstone in 1871. But this time, he wasn't looking for a missionary. He was getting ready to take over.
The savage respects only strength, power, boldness, and decisiveness. Throughout my entire time in that region, I found it necessary to execute only 4 natives so that the rest would understand that I was the master. Oh, what a waste of my precious bullets. There were 99 of them against just 1, but as cunning and deceptive as they were, they never attacked me. I made sure they feared me. Henry Morton Stanley.
Following the king's orders, Stanley signed shady agreements with Congolese village chiefs. These chiefs often couldn't read or write, and they were tricked into thinking they were making alliances. But they were actually giving away their land, their people, and their freedom. That's how, in 1885, the Congo Free State was created. It was private property, not of Belgium, but of King Leopold II himself. It was a private colonial business run from Brussels, but carried out with terrible cruelty on the ground. To force the Congolese people to collect rubber, they would cut off children's hands. Here we see a father looking at the severed hands and feet of his daughter. In just 23 years, between 1885 and 1908, the population of Congo was cut in half. It's believed that 10 million people died under Leopold's rule. It wasn't until the early 20th century that these terrible acts were brought to light. Journalists, diplomats and missionaries spoke out against the terrible things happening. King Leopold was cornered. In 1908, Belgium officially took back control of the land. That was the end of the Congo Free State, but it wasn't the end of the suffering. A child is born on an autumn day in 1887. His name is Simon Kimbangu. On the surface, he's just like any other newborn. Yet this boy will soon carry the weight of an extraordinary future. In this part of Africa, where old customs were still alive, colonization wasn't just a physical takeover. It was a direct attack on the soul and memory of the people. As he grew up, Simon met the British Protestant missionaries from the Baptist mission. He learned to read the Bible, to pray in the European way, and discovered the Gospels. But what the missionaries didn't realize was that the Bible's message they shared would mean something totally different to him. Kimbangu didn't see a white God from Belgium or England. He saw a God for everyone, fair and reachable by black people without needing the colonizer in between. He started having powerful dreams, visions. He saw crowds of people. He saw Africa rising. These experiences, which many ignored or thought were dangerous, grew stronger as the people of Congo suffered more under colonial rule. Simon Kimbangu was not a political troublemaker. He didn't use weapons. He didn't fight against the colonists with guns. But another power was growing inside him: his words, his faith, the certainty of a divine calling. He knew his message would come, and when he spoke it, nothing could stop it. Not the colonial government, not the missionary church, not even prison. In 1918, he married Marie Mwilu, a strong and loyal woman who stayed with him until his last days of freedom. Together, they raised their children with a strong faith, centered on Jesus Christ, but free from the mental chains put on them by European missionaries. It was in this setting, at the start of the 1920s, as Africa groaned under the whip of the colonizer, that Simon Kimbangu's voice was about to be heard. A voice from the people, a voice that nothing could silence.
These colonizers are unable to show kindness and brotherhood to those who welcome them with kindness and brotherhood. They are quick to order a cowardly Congolese man to cut off an innocent child's hand or foot, but they gladly call us savages because we are barefoot. Well, if they are an example of civilization, then thank God I'm not civilized. Simon Kimbangu.
Simon Kimbangu, who was 34 years old, began to speak to a small group of people. He said that God had given him a special job to do, a job to free the people of Congo, not with weapons, but with the power of the Spirit. From the very first days of his work, many people came to see him. They came from far away, walking across fields, through forests and over grassy lands. They weren't just curious, they were hungry for the truth. Men, women and children who were hurt by being controlled by others, by being hit, by being shamed and by unfairness. In Nkamba, they found a man who didn't talk like the missionaries, who didn't just read from European books, but who taught in Kikongo, in their own language, from his heart. Kimbangu talked about a God who saw the suffering of black people, about a Christ who was born poor, was treated badly, and was put on a cross. He said it wasn't true that black people were cursed, not as good, or meant to be slaves. He taught that freedom is a gift from God. He said that God does not treat people differently based on their race. These words were simple, but they were very powerful, because they questioned the way things were set up by the colonial rulers and the moral power of the missionary church. A child who was blind from birth can now see. A woman who was paralyzed for years stands up and walks. A man who was said to be possessed by spirits suddenly finds peace. Word spreads like wildfire. Kimbangu heals, Kimbangu prophesies, Kimbangu is sent by God. The missionary church panics. How can a simple layperson without a theology degree, without European support, do what they cannot? Even worse, believers start leaving the missionary churches to come and pray with Kimbangu. He doesn't build a temple of stone, he builds a temple in hearts. The colony, it senses danger. The Belgian authorities quickly understand that Kimbangu's influence goes beyond religion. He awakens a conscience. He embodies a non-violent, spiritual, but deeply rebellious resistance. And even more worrying, Kimbangu starts to prophesy. He announces that the black man will soon be free, that one day the white people will have to leave Africa. He states that Congo will not remain colonized forever. These words travel through villages, rivers, and cities. Everywhere, his name is whispered, he is respected, he is admired, and among the colonial authorities he is feared. But Simon Kimbangu does not call for war. He preaches peace, love, and inner freedom. For him, true independence begins in the soul. This message, both revolutionary and deeply Christian, marks the beginning of an unequal fight between a prophet without weapons and an empire with prisons, soldiers, and an entire state. This fight would soon change the history of Congo forever. These are not old stories told centuries later. These are real events from that time, told by people who saw them. Villagers, elders, and sometimes even missionaries themselves, who were shocked and couldn't deny what they saw. This isn't magic. Kimbangu himself said, "I am not the one who heals, it is God, I am only a servant." For his followers, these miracles are not strange things. They are God showing that his mission is real, a spiritual sign on a man chosen to wake up a country. And as more healings happen, more people come. He's not just preaching in Nkamba anymore. Everywhere he goes, hundreds, then thousands of people gather to listen to him, to pray, to hope. But these amazing events also get the attention of those who don't trust him. For the missionary church, this is wrong. For the colonial leaders, this is like trying to start a rebellion. A man who can bring thousands of people together just by his spirit is too dangerous to be free. The colonial leaders started to feel worried in a way they hadn't expected. He wasn't an armed rebel, he wasn't a soldier, he wasn't even a politician, but his presence alone was messing with the way things were set up. Because he had touched something the Belgian Empire feared most, the spirit of the people. They couldn't stand that a Congolese man who hadn't gone to European schools and wasn't approved by the church was attracting thousands of followers every week. And most importantly, that he was telling them they were worthy, free and blessed. So the decision was made. He had to be arrested, and it had to be done fast. A warrant was put out for Simon Kimbangu. Right away the hunt for him began. Armed groups from the public force were sent to Nkamba and the villages nearby. His followers were questioned, beaten and threatened. Some were killed on the spot for hiding their prophet, but Kimbangu, without fully hiding, kept doing his work. He preached in the hills, in the savannas, in the forgotten places of society. He kept healing, prophesying and comforting. For 5 months he avoided being caught. Then on September 12, 1921, knowing that the Belgian authorities were starting to kill his followers, he made a big decision. To stop a bloodbath, he gave himself up. He calmly, and without fighting, walked up to the soldiers, carrying just a Bible. He said, "If they are looking for me, leave the others in peace." On October 3, 1921, in the city of Thisville, now called Mbanza Ngungu, a very harsh trial began. He wasn't given a real chance to defend himself. No Congolese lawyer was there. The colonial officials accused him of causing trouble, of making people rebel, and of supernatural healings which they called witchcraft. The trial only lasted 1 day, just 1 day to break a man. And yet, Simon Kimbangu kept his head held high. He didn't deny his faith. He didn't turn away from his visions. He simply said that he was acting according to God's will. The decision came down, death by firing squad. But because of how big the case became, Belgium, under pressure from other countries, changed the sentence to life in prison. A sentence that couldn't be changed, an exile with no return. On October 3, 1921, in great secrecy, Simon Kimbangu was sent to the far south of the country, to Elizabethville, now Lubumbashi, more than 2,000 kilometers from his homeland. He would stay there for 30 years. 30 years, 10,950 days. No visitors, no contact, no earthly hope. He was locked in a tiny, dark, damp cell with overwhelming heat or mineral cold, depending on the season. His only companion, prayer, meditation, solitude. And yet, according to his followers, he continued to have visions. He prayed for Africa. He announced the future. The guards said he never complained, that he hardly spoke, but that he prayed every day at the same time. Some reported strange phenomena around his cell. Unexplained light, singing without a visible source, supernatural peace. On October 12, 1951, at the age of 64, Simon Kimbangu died in detention. He never saw Nkamba again. He never knew freedom. But in collective memory, he did not die. He entered another form of life, a prophetic, transcendent, immortal life. For the man they wanted to silence left a voice that can still be heard in the streets of Kinshasa, in the temples of Africa, in the songs of children, and in the hearts of millions of believers. Kimbangu never got to live in the Congo, he prophesied. However, less than 10 years after his death, the Congo saw the spirit of courage and manliness that Kimbangu had so desperately preached and died for manifest through the next generation of Congolese leaders who defied Belgian rule in the country he loved so much. Men like Kasavubu and the legendary Patrice Lumumba, a fearless young Congolese revolutionary whose lack of fear would propel him to glory and hasten his death. Yes, Congo became independent less than a decade after Simon Kimbangu's death, as he had prophesied, but it quickly fell into chaos after the brutal assassination of Lumumba just months after independence. The culprits? Belgium and other Western powers who used cowardly and greedy Congolese like Joseph Mobutu and Moise Tshombe to do their dirty work in exchange for power, just as Leopold's men ordered their Congolese henchmen to carry out their inhumane acts. The history of Congo, from Leopold's takeover in 1885 to the present day, is not pretty. However, despite all these horrors, strong men have always emerged. If you like this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe to Retro Peak.